Hello and welcome to the Human Instrumentality Podcast. My name is HunterJawa, but I also go by Josh, and I'm joined with my friend VanillaFish to talk about some various topics. So,
That is me, VanillaFish, aka Robbie Fisher. That's my real name. You can also call me Fresh Beats. Anything goes.
we're calling this the Human Instrumentality Podcast for now. I guess that's a temporary name, but it's a homage to our uh, beloved anime, Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Much love to Evangelion. Much love.
I believe we both hold it close to our hearts.
Too close sometimes.
Yeah.
Too close.
Too close. Like reckless amounts of money on merchandise. That close.
Figures on figures. I'm talking at least $500 in the tank, thanks to an anime from the 1990s.
Absolutely. You gotta get your Revoltex. You gotta get them girls.
Gotta get them art books. Gotta get them DVDs. Gotta get them imports.
You gotta have it all.
Bed sheets. Everything.
Bed sheets. So yeah, that's the title for now. If you like Evangelion, we're not gonna talk about it this week, I think, but I think
Yeah,
the plan
I
is to
feel
do
like to talk about the new movie, probably have to dedicate at least an hour,
Yeah,
maybe just solely on that.
right. So that'll be in the works. But for now, I think we're just gonna run through and talk about some video games we're playing and see how it goes. So, you want to talk about what you're playing?
Well, lately I've playing a lot of video games lately. Usually I like to split my time between the Chinese cartoons, the video games, tons of hobbies, but lately playing a lot of video games. Playing Odin Sphere on my PlayStation 2, Vanillaware game.
Right. We played that a little bit last night.
Yeah, big fan, love it so far. And I've played it before, didn't really get that far into it. Then I picked it up again, which I've done with a ton of games, and I fell in love with it. Probably, I'm about like 25, 30 hours in. I'd say about halfway done. Finished the third book last night. 2 more to go, then the epilogue. And just a big fan of Vanillaware games.
It seems really quirky, but like, kind of, it seems really complicated just watching you play, but it's actually just kind of quirky and fun. I don't know, like.
Yeah, it's got a deep item crafting system with like tons of different like recipes for combining different items into new ones. Then you didn't even see it, but there's a whole other like mixing, like alchemy kind of thing, but instead of with potions and whatnot, it's with food to also increase your levels. That's a whole different thing.
Right.
But the base game, it's not too deep, but I guess it's deep enough to like keep you there.
Yeah, I like how the combat was like super simple, and I guess we only played like the range character last night, but the camera was like real zoomed in, real close, and it was real simple combat. But you get that like map, and you have there's a lot of strategy going on to like positioning yourself and the way you like prepare for battle.
Yeah, it's well like some other Vanillaware games. It's the only other one that's like a 2D side scroller. It's just basically one button combat.
Right.
But it's how you position yourself, what items you use that really like drive like the gameplay. Then another thing is just that gorgeous artwork.
Yeah, I'm all about the Vanillaware sprites.
And I'll tell you what, even on the PS2, I think it looks really nice.
Yeah.
The only issue is the frame rate, but that's nothing to do with like the art. But even Muramasa on Wii, I honestly think that's one of the best looking games of this generation.
Yeah, that's probably like easily the best like style for any Wii game that I can think of right now.
And I just saw an image of comparison between that and the screens on the Vita, and it looks real nice in HD.
Oh yeah.
Real nice.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. I think I'm gonna have to. I don't know.
I might have to buy a Vita for that.
Yeah, the Vita version looks awesome. It's a perfect game for handheld, I think, because it's nice and long, but you can really break it up into like episodes.
Yeah, it's like you play it in short bursts.
Right. So.
But back to Odin Sphere, I guess I'll tell you like kind of what it is. But the whole thing is framed. The main menu is you're a little girl in your grandmother's attic, and you start with just one book, and you read that, and it's the story of one character. You play through that timeline, and you see the other characters you play as later, but in the first story, they're like bosses or people who like impede your process. You finish that, then another book appears in the attic. You play through that story, and you see similar things that happened in the last story, but from a different perspective.
Right.
And you go through and you do that 5 times.
I thought it was
And
interesting how the one we were playing last night, you were fighting like the Valkyries and Odin and stuff, and you mentioned that the first story you actually play as a Valkyrie, and you're on the opposite side of that conflict.
Yeah, and it turns out like the first story you're all on the side of the character you're playing.
Right.
But then towards the end you kind of see that her whole like thought process is kind of in the grand scheme fucked up. And you get to the next story and the character you play as is a much more like noble kind of person. Then you get behind them. You finish that story, you get to the next one, and then you really get behind that character, and that character is like rooted to hate the first character you play as. So you think back and like, oh, that first character we played as, terrible person.
Right.
And it just keeps like each story you get to, you just hate the last character you played as like more and more until the end of the game where you realize every single person you play as is really a dick.
Lots of shades of gray.
Yeah, there's no real clear-cut good guy, I guess.
It's the same in Muramasa. Like in the girl's story, you actually just play as the villain for the whole time, and there's like endings where he'll redeem himself for his misdeeds, but there's also endings where you just do evil shit and you're a bad person.
And so at the end of Odin Sphere, you play 6 different boss fights, and you have to decide which character to face against which boss, and you get hints throughout like their stories, which one they really should fight. And if you pick the wrong ones, you get a bad ending, but you could go back and reorganize which ones fight who, and if you picked the right ones, you get the final good ending.
Yeah, I do like all the multiple endings they have in their games. It's kind of entertaining to try and get them all, and it's never like too esoteric that you can't figure out like from information in the game how to get them. So
yeah, Vanillaware definitely. Like I said, I'm just a big fan of like what they do. I like the art. Like the story, it's a little like it's based on Norse mythology, and it's kind of like cliched at points and stuff. It's enjoyable enough where I like getting to each new story part, but I wouldn't say it's like the main draw. For me, the main draw is still the artwork, but it doesn't help. Like, it helps that it plays nice and the story is enough to like it's endearing at least.
yeah, definitely. So we saw Odin and his spear, but I want to know if Thor is in the game and if he has a big hammer.
Thor is not per se in the game, although there is one boss you face multiple times, and he is Odin's right-hand man. His name escapes me, although it starts with an E, and he's a big, dwarfish man, and he does have a one-handed small hammer that he can throw, and it does come back to him, and he drinks from this huge flagon, and mid-boss fight, he will stop, and a Valkyrie will bring him more drink.
All right, that's probably good.
So I think that makes up for there being no Thor.
Did you want to talk about the Dragon's Crown controversy at all?
I feel like
Why don't we explain what it is first?
All right.
So the newest VanillaWare game is coming out this year, I believe. It's called Dragon's Crown, and it's a Dungeons and Dragons inspired 4-player co-op like side-scrolling beat 'em up.
Looks fantastic.
Yeah, it looks amazing. The characters in it are super, I wouldn't say deformed, but like exaggerated. So
which I feel like is totally the case with all their games. It's like their art style.
Yeah, definitely. They have characters like that in all their games. Like we were playing Odin Sphere last night, and Odin has like tiny dinosaur legs and a huge like upper body with arms bigger than his head. But the controversy, I guess, comes from characters in Dragon's Crown, female characters who I guess look too sexualized. There's a sorceress character.
Yeah, and then the Amazon.
And the Amazon, right. And I guess Kotaku published an article saying these were drawn by a 14-year-old boy, which is a real tact way to put it.
And I could hardly call it an article. It
Yeah.
was it was two sentences, just an insult,
Right.
and that's it.
I feel
And it,
like
I think for like a long period of time, it was the most visited article on their site.
yeah, I think so. I feel like I feel like portrayal of women is a real issue in video games, especially. But in this case, there's no pretense of like realistic portrayal of any human or creature at all in this game. Like all the male characters are completely top heavy and look like they'd fall over if you try to stand them up. Uh, Stuff like that. Like the art style of the game just lends itself to these characters who are over exaggerated and have these like deformed looking bodies.
And another thing is, this article came out what about like 3 weeks ago, or maybe a month.
Yeah.
Um, the game's been in production for what, like 4 years now,
Yeah, like 3 or 4 years.
and VanillaWare's first game, Grim Grimoire and Odin Sphere, came out, I want to say 2006, 2007,
Right.
and with pretty much the same art style, the very like over like weird proportioned male and female characters since then, and it never seemed to be like an issue. But
Right.
now, when Kotaku wants hits, it's an easy target, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way, and it's like the same reason they were talking about not wanting to bring over Senran Kagura, whereas like before nobody would really care about that game, which is just like this anime looking game with some girls who have a little bit of skimpy clothing going on, whatever. There's precedent for that.
Yeah.
But in the climate today, if you try to put that out, Kotaku will post like a 2 sentence article about how your game is putting back feminism 20 years or whatever, and people will go up in arms against your entire business.
I feel like that site is just a mess, really. Like, I sometimes go on it, and beneath, like, it's a lot of like short stuff like that, which is just trying to grab hits.
Right.
But then I feel like there are some editors there who are writing like legitimate, like well written.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a stretch, but like decent pieces that just get overlooked for these more like tabloid type posts.
And the tabloid type stuff has definitely like taken over as it's gotten more popular.
Yeah, I guess that's what like brings in the revenue these days.
But anyway, I'm looking forward to Dragon's Crown. I think there's a discussion to be had about portrayal of characters like that, but in this case, it's really not.
Yeah, I feel like it's not really a big issue, and if it is, it should have been brought up in 2007.
With this game in particular, I feel like you're barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, and I think you're barking at the wrong person too.
Right.
Although, George Kamitani, the artist at VanillaWare, head of the company, his response probably not the best thing to do.
Yeah, definitely not, especially when you're talking to Kotaku.
Yeah, but his apology seemed heartfelt,
Definitely.
and he was attacked too, so he was probably mixed like a lot of emotions going on there. But he apologized, and I feel like it should just be put to bed. And then when the game comes out, if it plays well, it plays well. I think it's going to be a good game.
I think so too. All right, you want to talk about anything else you've been playing?
I've also been playing Bioshock Infinite, and I already beat it once. This is my second playthrough. I decided to play on hard this time, and I borrowed it from my good friend Steven Stone. Shouts out to a brother. Thanks for lending it to me.
Yo, Steve, you're a good guy.
And the first time I played it, I got off work, went to his house, picked up the game, and it was around like 1 in the afternoon. And come midnight, I finished the game, like one sitting.
Wow.
Really engrossed in it, and I hadn't done that in a while, but it was short enough where I could also play it in one sitting. And I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it's like a masterpiece, which I feel like a lot of people are playing it up. I feel like it's one of the better things I played this year, but I haven't played much this year. But I wouldn't really call it like groundbreaking. It was good, but not near, like, it shouldn't be put up on a pedestal like some people are.
Well, maybe for stuff this year, it's definitely like the most creative effort I've seen put into a big budget game this year.
And I definitely enjoyed it more than the first Bioshock.
Yeah. A lot of people told me that the first Bioshock is one of their like favorite modern games of all time. But playing that for myself, and I played it. I played it like, to be fair, years after it came out. So, it's not really in its prime anymore. But I gave it a try, and I feel like Bioshock One has really like stiff and stilted combat. The story is kind of non-existent. Like, there's two twists, and that's really the whole game. And the setting is cool, but like it only goes so far. I don't know. It's like a good idea, and the introduction of a morality system and things like that were obviously like really influential on games that came ahead of it.
Yeah.
But by itself, I don't think it's like that great of a game so much as a great idea for a game.
Yeah, but I played it for the first time. I played it probably 2 months after the initial release, and at that time, I wasn't playing very good games, I don't think. That was maybe, what year did it come out?
2008. Oh,
2008, so yeah.
Don't crucify me if I'm wrong about that. That's like my
But
guess.
if it's around that time, that's like freshman year, and back then I was playing probably Halo, Call of Duty, stuff that I wouldn't want to touch now. So at the time, I guess it seemed like a really smart game, and I still like it to this day. I could probably go back and enjoy it, but I agree. The biggest draws for me for that were the atmosphere. I really liked.
Yeah, it definitely has good atmosphere.
Some of the writing I really enjoyed, and like, but man, does that drop off after the big reveal? Like at the end of, what would we say, like Act 2, it just dies. And also, I agree about like the gunplay wasn't fun.
Right.
Like,
Well, it falls apart for me when towards the end of the game I had fully upgraded like my machine gun, and you have to like reload it twice to kill a single like nobody enemy. Like your guns just don't really do anything anymore.
yeah, I fully upgraded the wrench and was able to go through the whole game.
Yeah,
Just
that's what I ended up doing because the wrench will put like elemental effects on people, so you're just incentivized to not use guns and beat people up with your wrench.
Also, there was really no repercussions for death.
Yeah, I don't mind that so much.
It kind of took away a little bit from me, but my biggest gripe with that game was that the final boss fight was awful.
Yeah, well, yeah, the whole ending was pretty bad.
Yeah, and the whole, I guess it was ahead of its time a little, but the whole black and white morality was thin. Like,
yeah, but it's one of the first of its kind, so I'll like give it a pass on that. But it's really
But-
not that big of a deal. Yeah.
I feel like it's a parallel to this game. Like, I like it a lot, but this one's definitely better. But I don't think it should be put like everyone puts BioShock on like the greatest game of like the past 10 years. I wouldn't say so at all.
I think we should in both cases they're really impressive creative efforts, and I think that they're ambitious and in an industry that kind of is cashing in on like recycling ideas right now.
Hmm.
It's good to like celebrate these games that have these really creative ideas, but it's another thing to call them perfect when they have obvious flaws.
Yeah. Now I'll probably talk more about my first playthrough of the game because it's been more impactful than my second.
Right.
But I remember being like, probably, there might be spoilers here too. So if you haven't played it yet, close this. The four of you, just shut it off.
Shut it
Now.
off. Just turn it off. Close the computer. Close it. Go out.
Yep.
Go to GameStop. Buy the game. Buy the season pass.
I don't know about that. I feel like it's not a $60 game, but if you got a good friend like Steve, if you have a Steven
Hey,
Stone,
Go to Steve Stone's house and ask him.
go to Steve Stone's house and borrow. Actually, I still have his copy, but if you got a friend that's like Steve Stone,
Right.
go borrow his copy. He'll hook you up. But I remember right at the intro, not at the lighthouse, but once you reach Columbia, that whole, probably leading up to the first bit of combat, that whole section where you're just engulfed in what Columbia is, I remember it probably took me an hour
Right.
to get from reaching Columbia to the first bit of combat.
Yeah.
I was just so engrossed in the whole environment of it, and I loved it.
That section is awesome, and I think one of the reasons I like it the most is, unlike the original BioShock, you arrive at Columbia when it's in its prime almost. Like, people are living there just doing their own thing, and you can kind of see their way of life as it goes on, instead of like after the city's destroyed or whatever.
Yeah, and it really sets the tone for like most of the themes you find in the game. Like
Right.
there's the religious fervor, there's the racism, and then which also blew my mind is since I'm a big Beach Boys fan, and I heard that song,
Yeah.
and I was like, what on earth is this is like 1918, right, or whatever year it was,
1912.
1912, and that already that got my mind going. But that whole first like sequence, the baptism, the first like big landscape shot you get of the city, I thought that was one of the best parts of the game.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And you don't really need combat to like have this world building and atmosphere.
Yeah,
And I feel like this game is a good example of that. The combat in the game is much improved from the original Bioshock, and I thought it was pretty fun and creative. But
yeah, and the combat for me, it wasn't my favorite part about it, but it wasn't necessarily a chore to do. Like
what I liked about it was in Bioshock 1, you were kind of you had options in terms of like battle arenas and stuff. Like you had options to hack or whatever, but that ended up being a big pain most of the time because the hacking minigame and things like that were just really long processes. In this game, you have a lot of options with your skyhook. You can fly around the arena. You have Elizabeth's tears that you can open up, and you have like, your whole set of powers to play with. So I feel like there's a lot of different ways you can approach it, even if you don't really have to, or if it's not really difficult enough to like make you have to be too strategic. It's fun to play around with all the stuff that's there.
And another, I'm mainly focusing on parts of the game that I really struck with me. And after the intro, it was probably when you go to the Hall of Heroes with Elizabeth, and you have to go through two, basically, you go through three, like museum type like walkthroughs depicting the Battle of Wounded Knee,
Right.
the Boxer Rebellion, and the death of Lady Comstock. And I thought visually, that whole sequence, all three of them, stood out. Like I thought those were awesome.
Yeah, definitely. The Lady Comstock one especially was really creepy.
Yeah, when Mozart's Requiem kicks in,
Yeah.
and that's when Elizabeth finds out who she really is. And it was and then the whole Hall of Heroes ends with you having to decide to like kill this man or spare him.
Which, as far as moral choices go, doesn't really matter. But
No, and I feel like also at that part of the game, it really sinks in that Booker is not a fucking good guy. He's a bad dude.
I think that's important too, because a lot of people were complaining about how the game is too violent. But right from the get-go in this section, they tell you that Booker wasn't like some victim at the Battle of Wounded Knee who was scarred by watching other people do bad things. He was called the hero of the battle, and he just like massacred these people. Like he's a killer.
Yeah, and then it's the only thing he knew, so he became a Pinkerton and killed more people.
Right.
And they really like emphasized the fact that he's not a guy you want to be. He's not a guy you want to be with. He's not a good guy.
I think part of the problem is that Troy Baker, who he does a great job doing the voice, he sounds like very like almost an everyman and kind of heroic.
Yeah, and
but everything you're like actually learning about the character through like his history and stuff, you learn that he's really not heroic and he's kind of a bad person. So I can see where the confusion would come in, but I think they do a good job of like justifying the violence in the game.
Yeah, and it is pretty violent, but some of it was like a little jarring, but I feel like that's some of the intended effect. Like especially at the beginning when like there's the bliss of like normal life in Colombia, and then it just like kicks right into like ultra violence.
When you like cut the guy's head off.
Yeah.
Or no, I guess you like jam that thing into his face.
Yeah, you kind of like rip his face off.
Right. That probably hurts.
Yeah, but I'm enjoying the game. It's on normal, it wasn't hard at all, and on hard, it hasn't really been that hard either. But I guess when I'm playing that, I'm not really looking for like a big challenge, as I am just to like enjoy the story.
It's funny because I usually try and play games on like a harder setting because stories don't impress me that much in games a lot, and I just want to have fun with the combat. But in Bioshock, the story was really good enough that I almost just wanted to go through the combat to see it. So if you're really in it for the story, it is good enough to not really worry about how hard it is and just go with the flow.
But probably my biggest gripe with the story is, which is where I'm at now in my second playthrough,
Oh yeah.
is when you go through. Spoilers ahead.
Yeah.
You go through the. I think it's like the third time or maybe the second time you go through a tear with Elizabeth, and you become a martyr for the Vox Populi.
Right.
And all of a sudden, Daisy Fitzroy is like a psychotic bitch, and then she's like the enemy you have to kill in that section, and that, like, her character, like, going through all the voxophones you hear about her, it's like interesting, like, character building, and then I feel like at that point it's just all of that was for naught.
Yeah. They kind of write her off really quickly as like, I guess she's just as bad as Comstock.
Yeah,
Um,
but really both sides of it were like you didn't really want to side with either.
and I think you have to understand a lot of like what you see about her character is propaganda before you actually meet her.
Yeah, I guess that's right too.
Her hero's journey, like she was this person who what had suffered abuse and struck back against it, but you know her portrayal as a hero is all through propaganda, and she really just is looking for revenge.
Yeah, but the scene where Elizabeth kills her, I feel like is also a really powerful scene,
Definitely, yeah.
and a big contrast to all the killing Booker does.
You feel it in her eyes.
Yeah, and for the rest of the game, from that point, I feel like she's not like the same person.
Yeah, contrast this with Tomb Raider, where you kill your first enemy and Lara Croft like pukes and cries, and then you go on and 5 minutes later you kill like 20 more guys and don't care.
I feel like that's a little different though.
But but in this game, Elizabeth kills one person and freaks out about it, but it's consistent with her character, and after the fact, she has to come to terms with the violence that she's engaging with now.
Yeah.
I think
But
it's a better handled story.
yeah, and I guess now we'll segue into thoughts about the ending. Again,
Sure.
big spoilers here. If you haven't played it, just cut it, turn it off, shut your laptop, open your window, and throw it out.
All right.
So, what do you think personally? I was like, I wasn't expecting it, and the thing is, like, I went into this BioShock game full knowing there was going to be some big twist.
Yeah.
They had to do it, and I was taken off guard.
Definitely, yeah, me too. But the thing is, they make the "Would you kindly" phrase like really clear from the beginning. It's what is it? Find the girl and wipe away the debt, over and over again with that. So I knew that was going to be part of the twist. But what it actually was way more interesting and way more complex than the original game.
And the whole time, it really had me thinking. And when you get to the big open area before Comstock House Emporia,
right,
and you go to the Lutece's house.
Yeah. I think that's optional too.
Yeah, and with all the flashbacks where you're in your house, you're in your like building, and the Luteces are there. I never really made the connection until in their house in Emporia, on like a desk is like Booker's like address, his like portrait, and at that moment I thought, well, there's something bigger going on here.
Right. But so the first time I saw the ending, I guess I felt like I was watching the Twilight Zone, and I was kind of like, what is this? But the more I think about it, it's a really interesting ending, and I think that it's a really like effective story about like family and redemption and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they make the mistake or take the risk of putting the word infinite into play when they introduce the idea that there's infinite different parallel universes.
Yeah, that's kind of tricky, like a tricky subject matter, really, because like is Comstock really dead, or is he just dead in this one instance?
It makes like the ending is a good ending to the story, but the fact that they introduce like unlimited, infinite parallel universes,
yeah,
as a plot device makes you confused about like what the ending means or if it means anything at all.
But what really blew my mind is it was there the whole time, and they like come the credits, they flash the title card again, and you realize infinite's in the name. Like
right.
The twist was there.
I actually thought infinite was like a stupid subtitle, like most games, but They
but
worked it in.
it's right there.
Yeah.
But on the second playthrough, I'm still having a lot of fun with it, and I'm excited to experience the whole last section again. That'll be fun.
I thought the combat section on the airship with the defense section was actually pretty fun. A lot of people were complaining about that.
Yeah, I didn't mind it because it was really one time where I was using everything in my arsenal.
Exactly. I feel like that's a section of the game where the sky rails, the tears, the powers, you need to really like try and make use of everything in your arsenal to fight like this desperate battle. And even on normal difficulty, like you'll die. It's
Yeah,
really hard.
it was the one section on normal minus the part with the Boys of Silence
Right.
due to like lack of ammo there, but
Yeah.
where I really had a tough time, and it was the only time really where I found myself using vigor traps and switching like from the two guns I'd been using the whole game.
Yeah.
And then my first playthrough, that was pretty much the only time I ever used the rails. But now on my second one, I'm using them a lot more, and especially the fight before you get to the First Lady airship, I felt was a lot of fun with the rails, and I wish I used them the first time.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else you want to say about Bioshock? Oh, you know what I wanted to talk about real quick?
What?
Just to bring it up. In the beginning of the game, you go to the lighthouse, right? And
Yeah.
You see a guy sitting in a chair with his brains blown out, and there's a note on him that says, "Don't let us down."
Signed C.
For what? Comstock?
I think Comstock, yeah.
So, who is this guy, and why is he dead?
All right, I'm guessing that this lighthouse is obviously a way to get to Columbia.
Right.
And so the guy has to be under at least the influence or even direct control of Comstock. And Comstock knows, because he is DeWitt, he stole DeWitt's child. He knows DeWitt's eventually going to come for him. So my guess is it's the guy who guards the entrance to Columbia, and he just told him, watch out for DeWitt, and when he gets here, take care of him. And my guess is the Lutessas either killed him or that's probably it.
Yeah, but I don't think the Lutessas can kill people.
You know, well, I guess you're right. So I'm not sure why he's dead then, but I feel like he was there guarding the lighthouse to stop DeWitt. How he's dead, I guess I don't know.
Yeah, that was confusing to me, because the whole reason they bring Booker over is to, close the loop and fix the mistake they made when they brought his child over. But they can't do it themselves because they've like been trapped in like this weird state of like trans-dimensional being.
Yeah.
So the idea I got was they can't really influence directly like what happens, but they can like influence Booker to do what they want for them.
Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think the significance of that guy is?
I don't know. When you start the game, you feel like the people who have hired you killed this guy and were threatening you not to let them down, but then you learn that they can't. So it feels like either it's a
Then
problem
maybe it's I guess it's there to frame like to get you into that mindset initially of being like it being related to the girl in the debt.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. It's not that important, but I've always been confused about that.
Yeah.
It's like the one thing I haven't seen anybody really like come up with a specific explanation of why.
The only thing I think that ties it to maybe Comstock is that note.
Yeah.
But C could be anybody. Could be Cody. Could be Colby. Could be Carson.
Could be Carson. All right. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
There is one more game I've been playing a lot of, and that's Dark Souls. I know you're familiar with it.
A little bit.
And recently, it's $20 now, and I'll tell you right now, go out and get it. It's a fantastic game. But recently, some of my friends bought it, so I decided to start a new character and play with them. And it turned into me like starting 3 new characters,
Mm-hmm.
and that might be my favorite game on the Xbox 360.
It's definitely a cool game. Me as not very good at video games, it's kind of hard and I have trouble with it. I think my biggest complaint about it is the lack of direction. And some people
Yeah.
like the exploration, but just the way the game works, you can get yourself into situations where you're in a place where you really like can't go on, and it's kind of hard to know where you're supposed to go. That's what happened to me. Like I love the game and the way it plays, but I wish maybe I'm a casual baby. But I wish I was like kind of given a little bit more sense of direction of where I should be going, so that I could experience like a satisfying difficulty curve.
My explanation for that, I feel like maybe what the directors wanted was for the multiplayer mechanic to play a role in that,
Right.
where where players feel like they should help out newer ones by placing like you could place notes down that could be read by other players online,
Yeah.
and maybe to like guide them, like you throw one down before the cemetery area, like this isn't where you should go, and like guide them there. But then again, not everyone is necessarily playing online.
Yeah, I wasn't playing online at first.
But for me, I did the same thing as you. I went the wrong way initially, and I was kind of like upset about it. But I really like the sense of like solitude in that game, and I feel
Yeah.
like it adds a lot. But I can see where you can complain about like not knowing where to go and such.
You definitely feel like you're in danger at all times, and even like run enemies, you see them and you're like, all right, I gotta get serious and figure out how to beat these guys. Like fighting is a serious. You feel like it's a serious challenge no matter what.
Yeah, there's never really later on as you get higher levels and you go back to like
Yeah, I
the
guess.
beginning areas, you could still be killed by those enemies,
Oh, okay, okay.
but you could let your guard down a little bit. But still, I feel like at all times you're on your toes.
And it ramps up nicely too. Like you're fighting skeletons and stuff, and then you move on and you see these giant knights with huge shields, and like, oh shit, like how am I gonna beat this guy? Like this guy's gonna kill me.
And I feel like in the game especially, the boss fights are fantastic,
Yeah.
and they're kind of like it's the only other thing that's made me feel like real satisfied in a boss fight that's somewhat similar to something like Shadow of the Colossus, where they're not as big as those bosses, but they're still like big enough, and it seems like it feels 100% like a boss fight. And there's nothing like in this game that's like as difficult as this, where the feeling after you beat like a really tough boss on like the 14th try at 4 in the morning, there's no other feeling like that, I feel like.
And it's refreshing too that you don't really have to, like, even compared to Shadow of the Colossus, you don't like climb these guys and hit a specific spot and just kill them by doing the rule of threes so much. You really just have to put all your skills and abilities that you've worked up and your personal play style to the test against the boss, and see how you stack up.
Yeah, and there's so many different ways to play, which is a problem for me because I find myself making a new character every time.
Right.
So now I have like 6 or so characters all at one spot in the game, and then I always find myself, I want to try out dexterity weapons, or I want to try and use magic this time, and I just go back and play another character up to that point. So I really need to get around to finishing all those characters off. But if I ever want to like sit down and play a game, like I could play this at any time.
Yeah, it's definitely fun to just sit down and play and get immersed into for a while.
And I'm happy that because it's definitely not a game for everybody, and I'm real happy to hear that my friends that did get it are really enjoying it.
Right.
So have you been playing anything?
Off and on a little bit. I've been playing all the games you talked about, obviously.
Yeah.
I've been trying some other games lately. I put a few hours into Tomb Raider, which I mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
and I haven't really been liking it. So I'm probably not going to finish Tomb Raider. Just to briefly talk about it, I guess. The story doesn't seem very good. The character of Lara doesn't really make sense to me. Like I mentioned, she kills somebody and then feels upset and throws up on screen, and after that you walk like 5 steps and you're a mass murderer.
Yeah, that doesn't. I've heard that from a lot of people.
And there's the beginning of the game that I've played, like the first 2 or 3 hours, is a lot of quick time events, and I hear that kind of cuts off as you go on, and it's more like satisfying combat. But I haven't really gotten to that part yet, so the quick time events are pretty annoying.
Mhm. I heard the combat in the game is real satisfying, but there just isn't enough of it.
One thing I do like is the cover system. Just to talk about it, one of the I think Gears of War really popularized the idea of pressing a button that sticks you to cover and then peeking over. In Tomb Raider, you automatically stick to cover that you're standing nearby, which sounds like it would be frustrating and broken. Oh, I don't want to be behind this, but it really works well, and I don't really know. It's hard to describe why, but you feel like you're always doing what you want to be doing.
Yeah, it's like nice and fluid.
Yeah, definitely. You don't feel like you're stuck to anything at any time, and you can just pop off of and stick to anything you want just by moving towards it. Okay.
One other question about that game though is the hair physics. How are they?
Well, I played the 360 version, so there were no hair physics.
All right, never mind then. You're playing the wrong version. Everyone pick up the PC version of Tomb Raider.
Turn on Tress effects. If you want video games to portray women more realistically, support Tress effects.
I've seen it, and that hair looks real nice.
It looks kind of freaky, if you ask me.
I think it looks cool.
Like, it obeys its own rules of gravity, sure, but they're not like the real rules of gravity.
No, but hey, they're trying.
All right, I appreciate the effort. Tress effects, good on you.
So what else are you playing?
I started up Sleeping Dogs, and I guess I don't have much to say about it other than it's a lot of fun compared to Grand Theft Auto game. I definitely like that it's focused on melee combat in a kind of Batman Arkham Asylum style fighting system, which is like definitely a ripoff, but that fighting system is so good that
it's so good. I mean, if you're gonna rip something off, This is good, you know.
Rip off the best. And of course, in Sleeping Dogs, you can actually kill people. You're not Batman, so you can do some pretty brutal stuff with it too, and that's nice.
The problem with me in Grand Theft Auto games is I love like the big sandbox, but the gunplay is never that good.
Right. And
the story, like, it's either like a heck of a lot of fun or it gets way too serious. And with like if I'm in a sandbox with like sports cars, guns, all that, I want to go fucking crazy.
Yeah.
So.
And Sleeping Dogs definitely facilitates that kind of behavior, for sure. And with regards to the gunplay, I haven't even gotten a gun in the game yet, so I feel like they're definitely like keeping that separated from most of the other activities in the game.
Well, if they put so much like time into making the hand-to-hand combat fun,
right. Yeah,
I feel like they shouldn't give you like a gun until way later.
Yeah. The driving, I think the driving might be the most fun, and I especially love that there's a system that lets you hijack cars from your own car just by pressing a button, and then you jump out the window and jump onto the car and get in. So it's fun to just like jump between cars and go up the highway like that, sort of Matrix Reloaded style.
It seems like this game is like a nice sandbox, like mixture of like somewhat the seriousness of Grand Theft Auto, but like the over-the-top fun of like a Just Cause game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't like Grand Theft Auto at all or sandbox games like that, you probably still won't be like too into this. But I think it's definitely an improvement over, say, like Grand Theft Auto 4, and it's like marginally more fun. So I'm gonna play more of it and see how it goes. But the beginning of the game is good.
That's good to hear.
Did you want to talk about Fire Emblem at all?
Yeah, I could talk about Fire Emblem.
I'm a huge Fire Emblem fan. I have all of the games that have been released in North America. Fire Emblem 7 for the GBA is one of my favorite games of all time. So I was definitely looking forward to Awakening, and I feel like it has a lot of like smart improvements that make the game a lot more addicting than it was. Like the way you have to manage relationships between your characters, and the pair-up system and the way it plays into that, and also the way that you can customize like child offspring characters and stuff. There's a lot of depth to the game that like you can engage with if you want to or not, and manage.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this game, and the only other Fire Emblem I have played is Fire Emblem 7 for the Game Boy.
Right.
And I'm a big strategy RPG fan, and for me, this game was like perfect because I didn't really have one on my Nintendo 3DS, and it came out at the right time where I had big gaps of time at school, so I just sit there and play this game for hours on end. And I think I've logged in about...
It's perfect for playing on the go for like...
Yeah, and I think I've logged in maybe about 100 hours or so, and like I can't say enough good things about this game. Like, if you own a 3DS, I feel like you need to own it.
And a smart addition they made is the casual difficulty.
Yeah.
because Fire Emblem can be punishingly difficult if you're not a fan of strategy RPGs and that sort of thing. But if you really just wanted to get into the game for the story or the characters, they let you by including this difficulty setting that makes the game much easier, and you don't have to worry about your teammates dying.
I had a couple friends who have played older Fire Emblem games and really couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
And they got Awakening, and they played on casual mode, and they loved it.
So they definitely widened the appeal of that, and casual is not something that I would use so much, like, just as a huge fan of the series and a purist, but I definitely appreciate that it's there for people who are new to the series and want to get into it.
Yeah, and I'm one of the bigger issues with this was like, is this the first time Nintendo's doing DLC?
No, New Super Mario Brothers 2 had.
Yeah, they used it, but I feel like I've bought a couple maps and stuff. I like the extra content, where it's like another map you could play.
Right.
But what I didn't like was the maps that got you like in-game money or in-game experience.
Yeah.
I feel like that was a little off-putting.
It's a little bit like microtransaction type
Yeah.
in that case. But they do frame it as like these comedy-focused levels, and it's up to you if you want to get that stuff or not. Like if you like.
Yeah, it's totally optional.
It's sort of I look at it sort of like the casual difficulty, where if you're not really about like grinding dudes up through playing the game a lot, and you just want to see like what they'll look like at a higher class or something like that quickly, you can pay your money and do it. We're not.
Yeah, and the story of the game was fine, I think,
Yeah,
but the best part for me was like the character interactions, and then the combat was just so nice, and the whole visuals of combat. You could like speed up the whole combat animations, but I found myself watching it every single time.
I would say that the story is pretty weak compared to like its contemporaries in the series.
Mm-hmm.
But the character interaction and the way they integrate like the entire cast throughout the game is definitely an improvement. Because in past games, a lot of the times you recruit characters who have like 2 lines of dialogue throughout the entire game, and that's it. In this game, you feel like you bond with, like through having a character that you roleplay, you bond with everybody who's in your party, and they all have like much more colorful personalities.
Yeah, and I played where I didn't let anyone die,
Right.
but I felt like if you were playing where if someone did die, you just moved on in the story. I felt like with these characters, you definitely feel like a loss. Like, I feel like it'd be way more significant than in like other games. The other Fire Emblem I did play, I'd meet a guy in like one chapter. He'd have like, again, like you said, like 2 lines of dialogue. He'd die, and I really wouldn't much care for him.
Right. So that I would say that's an improvement to the characters, but I would like to see a return to the more complex and political stories that Fire Emblem is perhaps known for.
Now, I did have a big issue with this game, launch day,
Yeah.
where I was looking forward to this game for the longest time.
Me too.
Proud 3DS owner, real happy to get this game. And I went out to, I want to say, 7 different stores the day it was supposed to come out. I think it was February 4th, something like that. And I either got, that game doesn't come out today, we don't have any, we only have 2 and you have to pre-order it, or those were pretty much the answers I was getting. And I spent probably 4 hours of my day going around to a bunch of different stores, calling a bunch of different stores. I was ready to drive to New York City to go get this game until I was online and I was reading a thread about the issue with getting the game, and I wasn't about to buy it digital download, although that probably would have been better than driving to New York City. But online they said that most Targets got 2 in, so I decided to call the local Target, which I don't know why I didn't visit or call, but I called them, and sure enough, they didn't have them out front, but they had them in the back, and I went there and got it. I was real happy.
Yeah, I don't really know what happened with that, and I ended up having to wait 2 weeks or something to get the game because no local stores had it, and I wanted to get the physical copy. Some people are speculating that they wanted to drum up sales of the eShop version of the game to like prove that it's a viable platform for selling games to 3DS owners. I don't really know if it's a conspiracy like that or not, but
I don't know if it'd be a big conspiracy like that, but it is nuts thinking like how that launch went so wrong.
yeah, especially since it's like the first Fire Emblem game and that I can remember that got such a huge marketing push from Nintendo. Okay, so in terms of other games we've been playing, last night we both kind of dug into Injustice: Gods Among Us, which is a DC fighting game from NetherRealms, who are known for developing the Mortal Kombat series. And I'm not really a fan of DC or Mortal Kombat so much, but I thought that Injustice was pretty fun, but it had like a few pretty big problems that need to be solved.
Yeah, I'm a huge fighting game fan, as Josh knows, and
Yeah.
all of you. How often I think I post about it on Twitter and stuff. Now, I am by no means good at fighting games, but I love them. I own a fight stick. I own a lot of fighting games, and again, what Josh said, I'm neither a fan of DC Comics or Mortal Kombat at all, and for me, it was fun, but I also had some big problems with the game.
So just straight off the bat, I really appreciate the way they make it like a visceral experience by having you interact with the stage and having like these kind of elaborate character introductions and super moves and outros and that sort of thing. But as you play, a lot of it gets kind of repetitive and the same things sort of happen over and over again.
Yeah, in the probably 3 hours we played, I was already sick of seeing every character's intro and their outro, and some of the super moves were starting to wear on me already.
Yeah.
And that was only 3 hours of playing the game.
Like Superman's super move is to punch your opponent into orbit, and he actually flies, off the Earth and punches them back down to where you're fighting, which is awesome. That's so cool. But that happens every single time you do it, which could be multiple times per fight. So I feel like I appreciate all the effort that went into making these moves really like special and brutal, but it just feels like there needs to be more of them or a bigger variety or something.
And even like I could be fine with there being that one super move, but what bugged me is there's one intro and there's one outro, and you see it every single time.
Yeah.
And you could skip the intro, but you can't skip the end of the fight outro scene.
So when we were playing arcade mode, we had to watch Hawkgirl jump up and smack the ground with her mace every single time he won a fight.
Which after a while, not that cool.
No, not that cool. This looks kind of dumb.
And another big thing that was jarring for me. Now this game does have Mortal Kombat lineage, but during the fight, your superhero gets damaged, and it's not like their clothing just rips or like they get like a bruise or like a little bloodied. Straight up, their flesh gets ripped off,
Down to the bone.
and it's weird.
This game is rated T for teen. You see people get their entire like pec ripped off, and you see their like ribs.
It's just weird.
Yeah, it doesn't even, and they don't act like they're in pain or anything. They just look like they have pieces of them missing, like a Lego or something.
Yeah, that didn't really sit too well with me, but it has nothing to do with the fighting mechanics. It's just another aesthetic thing I wasn't a big fan of.
One thing you did mention that I do like is the impact of the game feels really solid.
Yeah,
When you hit people, especially with like weapons and things, the way the sound is mixed and the way it just the feedback feels, you really feel like you hit that person real hard and they're in pain.
that was probably my favorite thing about the actual fighting.
Yeah.
Another thing I wasn't a big fan of was the costumes.
Yeah, they look dumb. I don't know.
I feel like it was like, hey, let's take the already like gritty DC and like let's bring in a team of like some edgy teens, draw us some costumes. Well, actually, they're not costumes; it's armor. Draw us some battle armor, and we'll use that.
I feel like a lot of DC characters have very minimalist costumes. Like, if you take like the Flash, for example, he just wears a red spandex jumpsuit
Yeah.
with like a lightning bolt in the center or whatever. I don't know if it really plays so well in a three-dimensional fighting game or not. so I understand like they wanted to make them look a bit more mature and a bit more practical, I guess.
Yeah.
But they really went overboard with it. There's like way too many like plates on top of people and just armor pieces everywhere, and it's very over designed, I think.
So I've never been a Mortal Kombat fan, and I don't really think Injustice swayed me at all. It was fun of like for the 3 hours I played it, but I could be perfectly okay never playing that game again.
Yeah, it doesn't really feel like it has like the staying power or competitive edge that a lot of
No.
other fighting games we play have.
And after you left this morning, I played some Darkstalkers Resurrection. I had a lot more fun with that.
All right, so yeah, overall I think the game's pretty fun, and I like I said, I appreciate all the effort that goes into making the game very like a visceral experience and getting down the way the characters fight. But as a fighting game, it's definitely a little bit flawed, and the issues kind of hold it back from being competitive with other fighting games that are out right now.
Hmm.
Okay, I think that will wrap it up for game discussion and this episode.
Yeah,
So,
that went on for a little while.
I'm surprised. We had other, but I think this is good.
Yeah. So I think next week we will be talking in length. I don't know how long it'll go. I don't know if this episode's length will try to be standard, but I feel like we could probably go on for a long time because next week we'll be talking about Evangelion 3.33.
So if you're an Evangelion fan, definitely tune in for that. It's going to be full spoilers, so definitely try and watch it if you're going to go ahead and listen.
And if you're not a fan of Evangelion, I recommend you watch it.
Yeah, definitely.
But I wouldn't say I wouldn't listen to the podcast because it would make no sense to you at all.
No. And there's spoilers and stuff. But yeah, so that'll do it for episode 1 of the Human Instrumentality podcast. Thanks for listening, and
Yeah, thank you.
this is HunterJawa signing off.
Good night.